Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Simone. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for joining me. If you are new here, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. It is Mother's Day weekend and I'm super excited. I just want to say happy Mother's Day to all the amazing mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you for bearing us. Thank you for raising us. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your unconditional love. To all the amazing mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my journey to motherhood. And in order to talk about my journey to motherhood, I have to talk about my birth story. So my mom, I've always said it, my mom is one of the most strongest women I know. She is the most amazing woman I know. I was born in a tiny little town in Clarendon called Simone. That is right, my name is Simone and I was born in Simone. It's weird. But anyway, in this little town, my grandmother was actually a midwife because I was born in the mid-80s. Hospitals weren't around the corner. Hospitals weren't 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes away. I was actually scheduled to be born at the beginning of April and I was way overdue. I was born at the end of April, so think about that. My mom tells me this story. I remember every detail of the story. She told me that when she was ready to give birth to me, my dad left her to go get my grandmother because she was the neighborhood midwife. And I want to say the distance from my parents' house to my grandmother's house is probably about 2 to 3 miles. And they were walking, they weren't driving during this time. And so my mom was in labor, she was ready to give birth. My dad left to go get my grandmother to assist her. By the time my grandmother got to the house, my mom already gave birth to me. She said she knew I was coming. There was no time to, do anything. She literally laid on the floor and gave birth to me all by herself. So by the time my grandmother got to the house, I was already born. I was crying and just raging from the moment I arrived. And I know, women or bodies are designed to give birth even without assistance, but boy, when I tell you, I cannot imagine all the pain that she went through, but she knew what she had to do. So kudos to you, Mom. Good job for bringing me into this world all by yourself. So now I want to transition a little bit to my journey becoming a mom. I just want to say none of my children were planned. None of them were planned. But before I got married, after we got married, my husband and I, we always talked about having kids. We knew we wanted to have kids. So I remember I moved to Canada in September. Yeah, I moved to Canada in September and I found a job working at this place that I'll come back with a story time about my experience when I lived in Canada. But anyhow, I remember going to my job and there was this elderly West Indian woman. I'll never forget her. Her name is Angela. We called her Angie. And I remember coming back to work after Christmas and Angie, she looked at me, she was like, "Girl, you got your Christmas gift." I said, "Angie, what are you talking about?" She said, "Girl, you are glowing. You're pregnant." I was like, "No, I'm not." I just blew it off. But if someone tells you you're pregnant, it's not something that, you just wipe out of your mind completely. And so even though I didn't believe her at the time, it's still stuck in the back of my mind. So eventually, days are going by and I'm like, okay, maybe something is happening. So I remember my husband came to pick me up from work and I told him to stop by the pharmacy. So I stopped by the pharmacy. I didn't even tell him what I was getting, but he was in the car, ran to the pharmacy, got a pregnancy test, and we went home. He still didn't know that I got the pregnancy test. So I went to the bathroom, took the pregnancy test, and voila, it was positive. Angie was right. I did get my Christmas gift. So I remember holding the test, and I came out of the bathroom and I showed it to him, and he was just like shocked, excited, like everything. At this time, we were married for a little bit over 2 years, and at that point we were together for over 5 years. So, you know, like, people were talking about me. I'm not gonna say who, but I know people were talking about me because I feel like in the Caribbean culture, once you're with someone for a while, people just automatically expect you to procreate, whether you're married or not. So I know there were rumors going around throughout the family saying that, oh, she's a mule, she can't have kids, blah, 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 blah. But it was my choice to not have a baby before we were married. And then after we were married, it was just like, okay, we're just not gonna prevent, but we're also not gonna be actively pursuing having a baby. We just knew we wanted a baby, but we weren't actively pursuing pregnancy, and we weren't preventing either. When I showed him the pregnancy test, the first thing he said was, "Can I tell Ryan?" Shout out to you, Ryan. Your brother loves you. He was just so excited to share the news with his brother. So yeah, that was my little story time about when I found out I was pregnant with my first son. The moment I realized that I was a mom was when he was born and the nurse left him with me. I know it's weird talking about it now because I'm a seasoned mom, but when the nurse left him with me, I looked at him and I was just like, they're gonna leave me with this baby? Am I even capable of caring, being accountable for this human being? Yeah, they left me with the baby, and that's when I realized, like, oh, he's mine. He's my responsibility from now going forward. And that was just a significant moment in my life where I was like, okay, I'm literally a mom now. I remember when he was born, my first son was born, the nurse was like, okay, so what are you gonna name him? And I remember telling her that his name is Michael. He's Michael the Third, because his dad's name is Michael, his grandfather's name is Michael, so he's Michael the Third. And she was like, okay, you should name him Trey. And I was like, okay, that's a good idea. His name is Michael the Third, but we call him Trey. So he's Michael the Third. His, what we call in Jamaica, his pet name is Trey. So everybody knows him as Trey. Say my pregnancy with my first baby was textbook. Like, everything went according to plan. I remember when I went into labor. Oh, that's another funny story. Literally, I was at home sitting on my bed watching TV. And, you know, he was scheduled to be born on September 28th. So on September 27th, I was watching TV. I knew, like, you know, a lot of kids, they come early, they come late. So that was just like a guideline, just like a target date, but I knew he wasn't necessarily going to be born on that day. So on September 27th, I was just sitting around watching TV and I coughed. And when I coughed, I heard a pop. Literally, I heard a pop. So I was so frightened. I got up and of course my water broke. I was just like, okay, it's go time. And I was in labor for about 4 to 5 hours. He was born at 11:46 p.m. So he was literally born 14 minutes before his due date. Perfect textbook pregnancy. I just want to switch gears and talk about my second child. Oh my goodness, you would think that you're more mature, your body knows what to do during pregnancy. I feel like with my second baby, it was far from textbook. It wasn't a rough pregnancy, but it wasn't the easiest pregnancy. If you watch my story time about how I changed my careers, you know that I was working full-time, traveling 2 hours away from home, and also getting my graduate degree while I was pregnant with my second child. And I remember, like, you know, towards the end of my pregnancy. My baby was scheduled to be born on February 28th, again with the 28th. Yeah, exactly the same, February 28th. And 2 weeks before he was born, I was just like having contractions, just in a lot of pain. I remember specifically it was a Friday, and it was Friday, February 13th. I was in a lot of pain. I went to the hospital. I'm like, listen, I think it's time. I think it's time to have this baby. They checked me. They said, you're not dilated. Your water isn't broken. And I'm just like, listen, I know my body. I think my water is broken. They would not listen to me. I know it's TMI, but the reason why I thought my water was broken was like, you know, when you're pregnant, you rest a lot. Every single time I would sit down for a while and I would get up, there'd be a little trickle of water, just clear water. It wasn't pee. Like, I know the difference between peeing on myself and just random water. So every time I would sit down and get up, just a little bit of water, just trickling down. And I told them, they didn't believe me. They said, ma'am, your water's not broken. You're not in active labor. Go home. I want to tell you that I went to the hospital about 3 or 4 times. They would observe me for 30 minutes to an hour and send me home. So I was in labor from February 13th. I went to the hospital on February 14th thinking, you know, they're gonna keep me, I'm gonna give birth. And, you know, the nurses were making jokes like, you don't wanna have your baby on Valentine's Day. It's not a good day to have your baby on Valentine's Day. He's gonna have to share his birthday with such a huge holiday. And I get it, okay. Friday, February the 13th passed. Saturday, February the 14th passed, and then we got to Sunday, February 15th. I remember I went to the hospital. By this time, I was going to the hospital like my cousin. I remember Tiffany, my cousin. Shout out to you, Tiffany. I love you, girl. She and I were at the hospital for hours. I remember having a conversation with this nurse, because every time you go, you interact with a different nurse, depending on who's on staff at the time. So I remember telling her, like, I've been in pain since Friday, and there's this, like, every time I get up, there's water trickling down, and they're telling me that my water did not break. So she told me, like, she's gonna test the fluid under the microscope, because all this time they're testing the fluid. I don't know, it's just like a simple like swab test, and I guess there are different strategies to testing the fluid. So this time she said, okay mom, I'm gonna test the fluid under the microscope. And then she came back and she was like, that is amniotic fluid. And I'm like, I've been telling you guys this for the past 3 days. No one has been listening to me. So I think there was like panic setting in, because if you know anything about labor and delivery and pregnancy, you know that once your water break, you really should give birth within 24 hours. Otherwise, your chances of getting an infection skyrocket. So once your water break, they really want you to deliver within 24 hours. At this point, my water had been broken for over 24 hours. I'm going into 72 hours of being in labor. And they started to panic. Everyone rushed in the room. All of a sudden, I'm being admitted to deliver my baby. I was tired. I was in pain for so long. So I told them, like, I'm gonna need the epidural. With my first son, oh my gosh, my experience with having an epidural was terrible. It took the anesthesiologist 4 tries to insert that needle in my spine. 4 tries. And to this day, like, if I stand too long, my back hurts. It could be just pregnancy in general giving you back pains, but I know like that had some kind of effect. But with my second son, anesthesiologist was great. 1 try, he got it in, and we were ready to go. I was in so much pain, I couldn't do it. My body was just like reverting. I think I was just like too tired. So I would get to a certain amount of centimeters and I would just stop. I don't remember right now how many centimeters I got to, but they were just like, Mom, your labor is not progressing. And they gave me Pitocin, which isn't great for you or your baby, but they gave me Pitocin so that, you know, I could get to active labor. And I'm just gonna speed up the story. My amniotic sac wasn't a massive break. It was literally a tiny break that was leaking, so they had to like fully break my amniotic sac. And when they did, boy oh boy, when I tell you, moms, if you're pregnant, my advice to you is to always follow your guts, trust your instinct, and don't let anyone tell you that you're crazy. When they broke the water, they could see that he already had his first bowel movement, and I did research on that after the fact. And whenever your baby is stressed, he poops whether he's out or not. So meconium is what they call that first bowel movement. It's really dangerous for the baby, because if the baby inhales it, it could get stuck to his lungs. He could have really been sick. He could have really been very, very sick had they sent me home, had I not been persistent going back and forth to the hospital. It was terrible. Like, I was just happy that he was okay and that I was okay. I have 2 more little stories to tell you. So after I gave birth to him, I had that IV like in my arm. He was born Sunday evening at 4:20, right? So going into the night, that IV was still in my hand and my arm was swelling. Like, I could feel my fingers getting stiff, and I was just like, could you please take out my IV? My arm is hurting. And they would tell me that, mom, we really want to keep it in for a few more hours just in case anything happens. We already have access to your veins. And I was like, okay. So a few more hours would go by, and I'm just like, my hand is swelling and it's just getting stiffer, tighter, and bigger. And eventually, like, I called like 3 different nurses. I was just like, okay, this has to come out now. And eventually they took it out. But had I not speak up for myself, I would have probably woken up the next morning like not being able to use my hand, because no one is listening to you. The other story that I want to talk about, and this happened with my first son and my second son. So my father's father passed away from jaundice. And when my babies were born, with the first one and the second one, they both had jaundice. But when they're born, they're a little bit yellowish. Their eyes are a little bit yellowish. They have to undergo this kind of treatment where they put them in an incubator. Not an intubator, but an incubator. And I remember, like, they would put them on their back, they would have light treatment for a while, and then they would turn them over. And they also had a little patch over their eyes, because apparently the blue light isn't good for their developing eyes. But the saddest part of my, birth stories is that with my first baby, I had to leave the hospital without him. So, you're typically in the hospital for 3 days, 2 nights. And on that 3rd day, mommy has to go home. Well, in my case, I had to go home. My baby needed 1 more day of light, because what they do is they test them. They do a lot of tests, and it's so sad because they literally take the needle and they stick them in their feet to draw blood, because obviously their veins are too tiny to access. So they would stick them in their feet and draw the blood from their feet, and that absolutely broke my heart every time they did it, and they would just scream and cry. But anyhow, with my first son, he needed, like, they would test his blood, and depending on the results, they would say, Mom, he needs like another few hours or another day of treatment. So with my first son, he was in the hospital for 1 day after I left. It was so heartbreaking. You literally felt like someone died, because it's like, here you are, a brand new mom, you're excited to take your baby home, and you have to leave the hospital empty-handed. And so that was, I went home, got some rest. The next day I went back, and at 3 o'clock, I was there before 3 o'clock. I was ready for my baby, but they do discharges at 3. So I went and I waited, and they did their final test, and they were like, good to go. So I got to take him home after the first day. With my second baby, oh my gosh, he had jaundice as well. And, they do their testing, they do the light treatment. So the first day, again, heartbroken, having to be discharged and leave my baby. And so, I would call first thing in the morning. By 12 noon, I would be there, breastfeeding, taking care of him. I would go home at night. And I remember, like, the first night when I left him, and then the second day, I was just like, okay. I called the nurse, and I was just like, how are his results looking? And they're like, nope, not today. He needs more light treatment. He's gonna have to stay. And it just tore me up every time I would get bad news. So he was there for 2 days. My first one day, so one extra night without me. But the second one, 2 days. It's the most heartbreaking thing. Absolutely tore me up, like having to leave my baby in the hospital for 2 days. But yeah, aside from having jaundice, they were perfectly healthy babies. They had no issues. That's my birth story for baby 1 and baby 2. And I also want to backtrack about when I was pregnant. When I was pregnant, you know, your hormones are crazy, like they're all over the place, and you cry a lot. Like for me, like everything would make me cry. But there were 2 specific songs that really made me cry. I would listen to it knowing it's gonna make me cry, but like I just had this urge, like I just wanted to hear the song. Both of the songs were Celine Dion songs. For my first son, the song that I had for him was I'm Alive. That song just brought tears to my eyes. For my second son, the song that I had for him was A New Day. Mother's Day songs are just so awesome. My favorite, all-time favorite Mother's Day song, or songs about mothers, I have 2. My top is Sizzla. Thank you, Mama, for the 9 months you carried me through. For me, it was more like 10 months. Seriously, I was way overdue. And then I also love Boyz II Men, Mama. You know, everyone knows that song. But I just want to go back to talking about my mom, the amazing person that she is. She is literally the strongest person that I know. My dad and her separated. They divorced when I was 3 years old. She raised us all by herself. She really struggled, and she did her best, and for that we appreciate you. We appreciate you, Mommy. There's so many lessons that she taught me. One of the greatest lessons that she taught me was to always be a giver. Her mindset and the way she thinks about giving, she honestly believes that when you're giving, you're blessing the person that you're given to, but you are essentially blessing yourself, because what you give will come back to you. And she is an avid giver. She is serious about her tithes and her offering. And she is also a missionary. She founded this mission called God's Love Mission International Inc., where she goes to Jamaica every single year. She visits churches, she visits infirmaries, she visits shut-ins, like people that, you know, are sick. Some of them can't walk, and, you know, they have all kind of ailments. She usually does like a giveaway. She gives away like backpacks, school supplies, personal hygiene products. She also does scholarships. She gives away monetary gifts to students who are doing well to assist with paying their tuition. And then when they go to the infirmary, they cook for the residents there. They bring like diapers and just like personal hygiene products, and that is her passion, to be a missionary, to give back to her community, and especially the people of Jamaica where we are from. I'm also a missionary. I'm actually one of the directors of God's Love Mission, but I'm not as involved on the forefront as she is. She goes to Jamaica every year. Anyhow, I do a lot of work on the back end. So I'm ordering the business cards, I'm ordering the bags, I'm ordering the school supplies, I'm putting together the itinerary, because every year I have to put together a program of where they're going to visit. Usually they go to like 3 different parishes every year, and then they'll go to an infirmary. I do a lot of the administrative work, and I also contribute to the mission. So even though a lot of times I'm not there to see the kids, to see the families, and just to experience the love that we have for our community, and, you know, the love that they have for us, because they truly appreciate everything that we do for them. But yeah, I do my part in terms of the administrative duties for the mission. I love my mom beyond like explanation, beyond words. She has been an essential figure in my life, and for that I will forever love her, forever care for her. And yeah, again, happy Mother's Day to you beautiful, amazing, wonderful moms. And I hope you enjoy this weekend, and I hope you just enjoy your journey through motherhood, because you know, I say once you're a mother, you're always a mother. There are different challenges to different phases, and I feel like once you master one phase, then you're graduated to another phase that you now have to master, whether that's the baby stage, whether that's the toddler stage, whether that's the preschool, grade school age, whether they're teenagers or college students or now fully grown adults. There are different ways to support your kids, so keep on doing a good job. I know for me, one thing that's always in my mind is, am I doing enough? I just want to tell you, if your kids are fed, if your kids are clean and they're happy, you are doing enough. There are days when you're gonna fall short, when you feel like, oh my gosh, today I've been a terrible mom. But it's okay and it's normal. We get frustrated, we get stressed out, we have a lot on our plate. But just keep on doing your best. Every single day, just wake up and do your best for your kids. And when the next day comes, you wash, rinse, and repeat. So happy Mother's Day to you, beautiful, amazing mom. I'm sending lots of love to you today and always. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.